recognition from former enemies as Eliam's movement continued to gain traction. Something unexpected began to happen. Some of his former critics, even those who had once vehemently opposed him, started to acknowledge his influence. The religious leaders who had condemned him for undermining their authority now saw how Eliam's message had reinvigorated spiritual practice in ways they had never anticipated. Many of their followers had returned to religion with a deeper, more personal connection to their faith, inspired by Eliam's teachings on inner reflection and authenticity. Political figures who had dismissed him as a radical were now witnessing the positive changes in their societies: reduced social tensions, increased community engagement, and a growing movement toward policies that prioritized well-being over economic competition. Slowly, they realized that Eliam's vision of a harmonious society was not only possible, but beneficial. Some of these former adversaries even reached out to Eliam personally, expressing their grudging respect for what he had accomplished. They admitted that while they hadn't agreed with him at first, they could not ignore the undeniable impact his movement had made. It was a moment of quiet vindication for Eliam, though he harbored no ill will toward those who had once opposed him. For him, this recognition was never the goal. It was simply another step in the unfolding of a greater vision. Reflections on the journey in the quiet moments of solitude. Eliam often found himself reflecting on the long and winding journey that had brought him to this point. It seemed like a lifetime ago that he had stood in that nightclub, surrounded by flashing lights and empty laughter, feeling a deep emptiness inside despite all the wealth and luxury around him. That night had been the catalyst for everything that followed, the moment when he had chosen to break free from the illusions of the world and search for something deeper. Now, as he meditated on the transformation he had undergone, Eliam felt a profound sense of gratitude. His journey had not been easy. He had faced opposition, doubt, and hardship, but it had been worth it. The personal growth he had experienced, the spiritual wisdom he had gained, and the impact he had made on others' lives were far beyond anything he could have imagined back then. Looking back, Eliam realized that it had not been a single event that had changed him, but a series of choices, each one leading him further down the path of truth and self-discovery. The journey had shaped him into the person he was today, a man who had dedicated his life to something greater than himself. Maturity of the missionary. As the years passed, Eliam reached a new level of wisdom. The fiery passion that had driven him in the early days of his mission had evolved into a more mature, balanced understanding of his role in the world. He no longer felt the need to prove himself or to fight against the system. He had learned that true change came not through opposition, but through transformation. Eliam had grown comfortable with the ebbs and flows of life, understanding that every challenge, every hardship, was an opportunity for growth. His teachings reflected this newfound maturity as he emphasized the importance of patience, resilience, and compassion in the face of adversity. He encouraged his followers to cultivate inner strength, not by rejecting the world, but by embracing it with an open heart and a clear mind. With this maturity came a sense of peace. Eliam no longer carried the burden of trying to change the world alone. He had built a community of like-minded individuals who shared his vision and were carrying it forward. The weight of the mission no longer rested solely on his shoulders. Impact on society, the spiritual transformation that Eliam had envisioned was now becoming a reality. His ideas had spread far beyond the borders of his initial movement, influencing every level of society. Schools began to incorporate mindfulness and emotional intelligence into their curriculums, teaching children not only how to succeed academically, but how to navigate life with compassion and self-awareness. Workplaces adopted policies that prioritized employee well-being, encouraging work-life balance and mental health initiatives. Governments began to shift their focus away from relentless economic growth and toward policies that promoted sustainability, community development, and overall well-being. On a social level, people were beginning to reject the competitive, materialistic mindset that had dominated for so long. Communities were becoming more cooperative, with neighbors supporting each other in meaningful ways. The values of kindness, authenticity, and connection were becoming more central to everyday life, and the ripple effect of these changes was felt everywhere. Eliam watched with quiet satisfaction as society began to transform. It was not a utopia. There were still challenges, still resistance, but the shift was undeniable. The seeds of his vision had taken root, and they were beginning to blossom in ways he had only dreamed of. Passing the torch, as Eliam grew older, he knew that the time would come when he would have to pass the torch to the next generation. His mission had always been bigger than himself, and he had never seen himself as the sole leader of the movement. Now it was time for others to take up the mantle. Eliam began to mentor a group of younger leaders who had shown exceptional dedication to the cause. These were individuals who had grown up with the movement, who had been inspired by Eliam's teachings and had integrated them into their own lives. They were passionate, intelligent, and committed to continuing the work that Eliam had started. Under his guidance, these new leaders began to take on more responsibility, organizing events, leading discussions, and further developing the movement's philosophy. Eliam encouraged them to find their own voice, to adapt the principles of harmony to the ever-changing world, and to continue evolving the mission in ways that stayed true to its core values. By passing the torch, Eliam ensured that the movement would continue to grow and thrive long after he was gone. He trusted the leaders he had mentored, knowing that they would carry the vision forward with integrity and wisdom. A lasting legacy as Eliam's life drew to a close. He could look back on his journey with a profound sense of fulfillment. What had started as a personal quest for meaning had blossomed into a global movement that had transformed countless lives.